Good morning. This morning I'm going to be giving a report on a recent mission trip, preaching tour to Ghana. Before I start, I just want to thank all those that supported the work there. For many years, I've been going for over 30 years, and if I'm going to be like the Apostle Paul and boast a little bit, in all those years I've never had to ask the local congregation to take money from the church treasury to help for the trip. It's always been supported by the brethren, and I'm truly thankful for that. I'm not sure why this is looking like it's looking, because it shouldn't look like that. Anyway, this is Ghana. Maybe I'm okay. This is Ghana. It's located between Togo and Ivory Coast. The official name is Côte d'Ivoire. Ivory Coast for English, and Burkina Faso to the north, and then the Gulf of Guinea, Atlantic Ocean to the south. Just some things I haven't updated, some pertinent facts about Ghana. The last time I looked, which was about 10 years ago, the population was around 21 million. Now it's up to 35 million. The area is about the size of the state of Oregon. The median age is 21 years. The life expectancy has increased. Back about 10 years ago, it was about 55. Now it's up to 70 years. The infant mortality rate is now 30 out of 1,000, and that's dropped, I believe. Whatever the good way is, it's better now. The population percentages, 37% of the population is less than 14 years old and less. The biggest part of the population is from 50 to 64, about 58%, and their older population is 65 years and older, about 4%. Illiterate, 21% of those over 15 years are illiterate. The religious makeup, about 71% identify as Christians, believers in Christ. About 20% are Muslim. About 3% are traditionalists. That would be those that would practice the traditional religions, not voodooism, but fetish religion along that line, worship their ancestors and idols. 4%, about 4.5% are just other various things, and then 1% claim no religious affiliation. So I left the 1st October, flew from Orlando to JFK, New York, and then to Accra. It was about 13 hours flying time, about 16 hours travel time. I fly Delta just for that reason. I can leave on Tuesday or whatever morning it is. I'll leave my house, depending what time the flight is, from 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock. I'll get to New York. I'll have a layover. I'll get on the flight that leaves about 10 o'clock that night, and I'm in Accra the next morning, so I don't lose time. I used to fly British Air, but it always chewed up a day because we would leave, wherever I would leave from either Orlando or Tampa, or sometimes go down to Miami. We'd fly into London, and we would get there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then our flight wouldn't leave for Accra until maybe like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd get into Accra in the evening. So I'd lose a day. And so this one's compacting that time a little better, and I don't lose a day in the work. So Thursday and Friday, and we got into Ghana Wednesday morning. By the time we got home, we were just relaxing that first day. On Thursday and Friday, we visited some local brethren there. Some of you may recognize Sister Cynthia. She was a sister in Christ from the Avayami congregation. Her husband died unexpectedly a couple years ago, and the congregation here and individuals have helped her. Not only are we helping her a little bit each month, but also this is her oldest daughter, Enam, and some of the congregation here are helping to send her to school. Where they were, in the village where they were at, Sister Cynthia informed us that some of the men teachers were taking advantage of some of the younger girls, and she was concerned about that. So one of the brethren, John Padamia, took Enum into his family, taking care of her, and she stays with him when she's not in school, doing very well, getting good grades. So we're thankful for that and thankful for those that are helping. This is Barnabas Ajari. Orange Street's not involved with him, but he's a brother I've known for 30 years. He had a stroke a couple years ago, and there were a couple churches here in the United States that were supporting him. And because of his stroke, they weren't able to communicate with him, and they heard about me, and I was able to go and visit him last year and then again this year and provide them some update on how he's doing and able to coordinate to get his support to him. Some congregations send checks over, and that's a nightmare for a Ghanaian, you know. I found over the years, used to be when I first sent money over, I'd just put a $100 bill in an envelope and put a bulletin around it, and that went well for 2 or 3 years, and then one of the post office people took the money out. So then we had to find a new way. So then I started using Western Union, and that went well. It was expensive, and then I started getting call from Interpol and FBI and CIA and every other supposed police organization in the world telling me that I was supporting terrorists and things like that. And obviously they were a scam on their part, and one fellow says, well, we're going to come and arrest you. I said, well, you know where I live. You know, I'm not moving. So, but anyway, they obviously, in the world we live in, they're scammers. They got that we were sending money over to Ghana and got my name and were trying to intimidate me. I'm too old to be intimidated too much anymore. Anyway, this is a new brother in Christ, Christian Marte Aquite. Adela, I'm not sure if Brother Adela was involved with his conversion or not, but Brother Adela told me about him. I had to snapshot this from a video. Young man, fairly new Christian. He was involved in a car accident. He was driving. He was just a passenger, and he lost one of his legs. They had to amputate one of his legs. And so he's had, and it's just been recently, he has to go and have the leg rewrapped about 3 times a week and get medicines, I think probably for infection and things like that. And so we were able to help him. I didn't get a chance to visit him, but I wanted to share that with you. Also, Albert Amonate, some of you may know that name. For a number of years, we've been supporting the congregation here at Orange Street has been supporting him. Plus, there's a sister in Plant City that sends something each month. He has 9 children. And before you go woo, 3 of them are sets of twins. So he had 3, 2 boys and a girl, and then twins. So he has 9 children. The congregation that he preaches for, the Bediku congregation, you know, I'm just going to be like the Apostle Paul. Those brethren are stingy. They're giving him, he's preached for him for over 20 years, and they give him less than $30 a month. And out of that $30 a month, he also goes and takes transport down to Adafo, which is about 10 miles away, and preaches for them on Sunday as well. So he's really getting nothing from the local brethren there. And Adela has went out and preached to him. I've gone and preached to him over the years, and just literally, if you don't support him, this is going to affect your soul. And they just wouldn't do it. So anyway, I got there and I find out that he and his wife have had to beg for money because they couldn't feed their family. So like I said, we give them, between what we send here is $150 a month. So I left about $400 extra for him and his family to tide him over. And the elders have agreed for November and December to send an additional $300 a month in our support. And then when we do the budget, we'll visit that and see if we can help him some more. But he's just one of those guys that he's not an extrovert by any sense of the word. He's just one of those guys that works. You know, he's behind the scenes, excellent preacher, excellent personal worker, but he's just not one out there, you know, tooting his own horn or anything like that. And sadly, you know, he can be fall by the wayside because, you know, he's not as extroverted as some of them, but just a good brother. So we were able to help him. Also, this is Brother Ajari. But I wanted to mention, I left this one in. I tried to get a picture for Aquaco Marfo. Again, a brother I've known for 30 years. And I mentioned it before. He has some kind of disease or disability. It's not ALS, but in some ways it acts like ALS. He can't walk on his own anymore, and so when I go to, you know, over there, I usually stop by and leave him a little bit of money to help with your medical expenses. But while I was there, I found out that the church that he had preached for a number of years gave him a car. And so, you know, and then when he couldn't preach anymore, they would use the car to go back and forth to services. Well, I found out that the car had broke down and they didn't have the $200 to repair it, so I left $200 with him. But that's not him. That's, of course, is Barnabas Ajari. So a large portion of the trip here, or not a large part, but a part of all trips to Ghana involve benevolence. There's just, I've told too many people over the years, I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life, but if I won the Powerball for some reason, I could take that, you know, $900 million and I could take it to Ghana and I could give it away in 6 months, and every one of those things that I give it away to would be a legit thing to give it to. There's just, the need is there. And so, you know, we help when we can and where we can as we have opportunity. And again, thank you for your support that we're able to do that. So after that, those initial visiting type things, we worked in Mepe, de Gourmet. This is an area, and those of you that have heard my reports in the past, we've worked in Aveami and Anayakope and Agbetakope. I can never pronounce that word, but those are 3 villages. And then Bartow's the next one in that road that leads to the Sagakope and closer over towards Togo. And we've never really worked in Mepe. In fact, there was not a congregation. Christians that happened to live in Mepe, they would go to Bator. So last year we were supposed to work there, but the flood, they had to open the floodgates on the flood on the dam at Akasambo, and it flooded a portion of Mepe. So we weren't able there to work, and so we went this year. And de Gourmet is it's not a refugee camp, but it's a camp for those that were displaced by the flood. And so we worked there. There is a small congregation that was started there by the church in Sagakope that's going to be working with the church at Mepe until they get established. So we went there. We got there on Saturday, and on Sunday I preached in Bator, and the congregations from Aveami, from Anayakope, and from that name I cannot pronounce, Agetabo, and then with Bartow and those that were in de Gourmet came and we worshiped together, and I got to preach there. And this is a picture of all that attended there. And then this is a picture of the church at Aveami. And then this is the picture of the congregation that meets in Agetogobo, that other place. And so I got to meet a lot of old friends and see people that I hadn't seen in a number of years. And then on Monday, we began the work, and we were staying at a guest house or a hotel in Mepe. It used to be years ago, those of you that have heard my reports, we would stay in people's homes. That's just not the way it works anymore. So now we stay in motels. Usually we can find ones that are very reasonable. We're talking like, $20 to $30 a night per room, and many times we double up in a room. So it's very reasonable. And usually we try to find a place where we can cook our own food. Well, the motel that we were staying in, it was within walking distance of where we met the brethren, and then we went out to work. The next one closest was about a half hour away. But this one that was close, they they wouldn't let us cook there. So we all ate at the common place here, where whatever was being cooked for the group that day, that's what we had. So I had some new dishes this year that I'd never had before. But every morning we would meet, we would have a devo, short lesson, singing, and so that's what this is here. This is some of the brethren studying with some citizens of Mepe. This was a sister here in the middle there. She was baptized. This is a different sister being baptized. These are some others that were being baptized. Totally, we studied with about 165 people, and there were 8 baptisms. What is really encouraging to me, we have a Ghanaian man. He's finishing up his schooling, preaching school, and he's agreed to go and work there in Mepe. We've secured a room for him. We've secured some support for him so he can go there. And he's been going back every Sunday. He's going to school in Kumasi, so he's been taking transport. Or no, it's either Kumasi or Ho. But anyway, he's going to school, and he's been taking public transport to be there. He gets there on either Friday night or Saturday, goes around, visits the brethren, and we've heard that all the new converts, they're at every service every Sunday. So that's very encouraging that they're able to do that. Here again, a picture of some of our new brothers and sisters in Christ. This is a picture of one of the houses that was destroyed by the flood, and you can see that. And this is the camp here. It was interesting that they set up tents there that families lived in. The tents had U.S. aid on them, so obviously our government had been involved with that. This was also a place where they had first started out having people. This was a school that they converted into a place where people could stay that were displaced by the flood. This is one of the, there on your left. Yeah, no, maybe. Yeah, your left. That's Brother Godson. He's the preacher at Zagakope, and so he's going to be the one that's going to coordinate making sure that they're helping this church to get further established. This is a group that came out every day when we went there to teach. This is me teaching. So there would be anywhere from 20 to 25 individuals there. Some had been converted previously. Some were just there to learn about the Bible. Had some interesting discussions. Individuals that were a member of other religious groups, and when you start looking at the Bible and the simplicity of it, it flies in the face of what others are doing that they can't find in the Bible. So some interesting discussions. And if I remember right, I heard that on that Sunday, and I wasn't there that last Sunday, that 3 or 4 from this group that we studied with had obeyed the gospel. This is not a picture of this trip, but I put it in here because I am the worst picture taker in the world. I forget to take pictures, but I put that in there so I'd know to tell you that while we were there, we bought 100 pounds of rice and 5 gallons of oil, which at that time when we were in that, where those tents were, there were about 20 families, between 15 and 20 families. So that gave every family, 5 pounds or a little more of rice, plus however they divided up in the oil, which would have been, a couple, 3 days. But anyway, that was just to remind me to tell you that part of the money went to help those that were there in the camp. This is every evening in town. We would have public preaching. This was a platform that we used. We had we had some brethren that had a PA system, and they had a projector like we used to have. And so typically what we do is they'll go and set up, and then they'll play some music, brethren singing and things like that. And then about 7 o'clock, they would show a film. A lot of times it's the Jesus film. It's actually put out by a group over in Orlando that have translated it into, 2,000 or 3,000 different languages and dialects. And so we can get that in the language of wherever we're at. At this place, it was Ewe. We've had it in Tree, which is another language in Ghana, Dongbi, which is another language. So we're able to get that film, it's based on the book of Luke, and it does a pretty good job, and get that in their local dialect. So they're able to do that. And then maybe the last 2 nights we'll show the Passion of Christ, and we'll show from when he was arrested until his crucifixion and resurrected. And typically in that, we can't get that in their native dialect, so one of the brothers will narrate what's going on as the movie's being played. This is the first night, one of the brothers preaching. They have pretty much a standard format. The first night is, the consequences of sin. The second is, Jesus is, our Savior from sin. Then the New Testament church, the Old Testament, New Testament comparison. And I forget what the last one is. Maybe it's just the judgment. So there's a standard system that they've used over the years. The Ghanaians have found to be effective. This is me. I preached 2 nights. One night we had rained out. You can see the banners not behind us. One night they got one of our Floridian thunderstorms with high winds and things, and it blew down the banner, blew down some lights and things, of course, which we had to pay for to replace. But anyway, so I got to preach a couple nights there. Here's something I hadn't seen before. These are the kind of pictures I take because they catch my eye and I've never seen it before. This was the palace of the paramount chief. And the paramount chief, he's pretty high up. Like years ago, I was in Mepe, and they had what is called a durba, and it's where all the chiefs come. And then some of the chiefs, they carry on palanquins, and a palanquin is you have these guys, they've got this stool, this thing on their shoulders, and the chief and maybe his wife and maybe one of their kids are up there, and these guys are carrying the chief. So, but a paramount chief, he's higher up in the level of chieftaincies, and so he had this on his, in front of his palace, and then the sub-chief, he had this in front of his palace too, and I've met a lot of chiefs over the years, and giving away goats and sheeps and gifts, because when you go to a village, you have to go to the chief and tell him you're going to come there, and he gives you his blessing, and then you're able to work. Well. So anyway, it's the first time I'd ever seen that. I thought I had ever seen that, and so I thought it was interesting. These are the brethren that on that first worship, that Sunday, after all the personal work, there they are, gathered, a picture take. I think on the far right is Brother Joseph, and he's the young man that's going to be going and working with that congregation permanently after he graduates. All right, from on Friday afternoon, Brother Adela and I, we went back to Abikope because on Saturday morning we were flying to Tamale and then traveling on to Sabuba. And we were going to be working up there with the Project Timothy. Project Timothy is a program of Heritage University in Ghana where they go to these remote areas and they bring men in, and then individuals go out and teach them a little more intensive course on the gospel, so that they're able to go back to the congregations in the villages where they live and share it with them. So I was asked to teach on Christian evidences. That's what I taught on. I forget what Adela was teaching on. Anyway, so that began on Sunday night. Here we are in the plane. It takes 13 hours. The overnight bus from Accra to Yendi is 13 hours. We flew from Accra to Tamale in 1 hour. I'll take the 1 hour over the 13 hours anytime. So that was, it made it a lot quicker. The first Sunday at Sabuba, after worship, they had a naming ceremony. And in their culture, you have your family name, which would be our surname. Then you have your given name. Like Brother Adela, his family name is Adela. His oldest son is Christian, that's his given name. But his house name is Kweti. And your house name is, it's usually the day you were born. So if you were born on Sunday, your house name would be, a certain thing. And there was one for a male, one for a female. And so Adela's youngest son is Quaynor, and his youngest daughter is Quakor. And so I think mine is Kofi, because I think I'm Friday born. But anyway, and so this was a naming ceremony where, they present the baby to the congregation, and they tell the congregation the baby's name, and then it's sort of like a shower, and so some of the ladies will come up and give soap and things. There's some traditional things like that. So we got to see that. This is me teaching at the class. I had 21 students. Last year we were able to provide them with desks and chairs and some student foams. So the class is like a 2.5-hour class. It was 5 nights. This year I used PowerPoint because one, I'm teaching in English. Well, some of it, their English is very good. Some it's not so much. So I tried to put as much as I could on PowerPoint, so not only could they hear it, but they could see it, and maybe help them to be able to grasp a little more fully what we were talking about. This is another class. This is Brother Nepak there on the far left. He's the preacher there in Sabuba. This was an advanced class that he and Brother Adela were teaching. These are some of the students there. Just took a picture. This is some pictures when we got back to Abikope, and we were preparing to leave to Tamale and then to Sabuba. Brother Nepak told us that there had been floods and the road was closed. And so we're actually before that. So all week we're trying to find out, are we going to be able to get through, and if the roads are blocked, if it's flooded, there are canoes there that you can get in and take across the flooded area. And so Adela and I are going back and forth, should we go, shouldn't we go, and everything. And then finally on Friday, we're just going to leave it up to God. We're going to go. Brother Nepak didn't know. He didn't know if he was going to be able to even pick us up, that he might have to have someone drop us off on one side of the flood. We get through the flood, and he'd pick us up on the other side. Well, found out after we got there that the flood had receded, even though we went through some water up to the bottom of his pickup, that he was able to drive through it. And thanks be to God, because the canoe looked like a very small kayak. And it probably wouldn't have been pretty for me and a trunk and Adela to get in this kayak. There was going to be water involved. But anyway, we made it. This is just some pictures of the floods that were along the way that we saw, took pictures of. One thing I asked Brother Nepok, and I mentioned this to the elders, I said, because the farmers, this is a big farming area up here, and the farmers had lost their first crop due to drought, and now they were losing their second crop due to flood. And I asked him, I said, when will this start to affect them? And he says about December to January, it's going to be very difficult. And you could tell when I was talking with him, he was really concerned, that people were going to go hungry in that. So we've talked to the elders, and we're going to bring it before the congregation that if you want to help, then come December, January, we're going to send some funds there. And he'll disperse those and get things, rice and stuff for the brethren up there and those that they can help. This was, we were back at Abacopi. We got back on Saturday, the last Saturday before I left, and there was a brother at Mepe. He had bought like a white straw hat, and I was sort of joking with him, I like that hat, and told him that, if he set it down, he was gonna come up missing it. So I got back to Abacopi, and here this brother had went out, and he couldn't find one like he had, but he bought me this hat. So I had to make sure I wore it. I wore it all the way home on the plane. So the last Sunday I spent in the hospital. That Saturday night after we got back from the north, I probably did, I don't think it was the food I ate, but, there was more than one time that I didn't use bottled water when I brushed my teeth and used tap water, and I got typhoid. So Saturday night was horrible. Sunday morning, when I woke up, told Brother Adela I'd had a rough night and everything, and he said, I'm going to take you to the hospital. And I've been to a Ghanaian hospital. I said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. So he called his son-in-law, who works in the medical field, and he recommended a clinic. We went over to the clinic. They tested me. I had typhoid. And I even had taken the vaccine for it. So, but anyway, I ended up getting 3 IVs. One antibiotic, one paracetamol, which is like an aspirin kind of thing, and then one just because I was dehydrated. My blood pressure was like 102/60. And I'm like, man, this is great. But that was pretty low for me. So anyway, that's where that was. I spent Sunday morning there from like 8:30 in the morning till 1:30, and he wanted me to stay till 4, and I said, I'm not staying till 4. But he let me out at 1:30. You can see the IV on my hand, and I hate needles in my hands. I just hate it. When I've ever had it done here in the States, it's been just horrible. And this little nurse in Ghana, she put that thing in my hand, and I didn't even feel it. And she even took blood from my other hand. I thought, man, I need to bring you to the United States. But anyway, it all turned out good. I ate like 37 Imodiums, and I was able to get on the plane and come home with no problems. Just some miscellaneous things that people usually like to see. This is one of the dishes. This is jollof rice with leaves, as Brother Adela calls them, which is cabbage and lettuce and cucumbers and tomatoes and onions, and then fried chicken. This I picture, like I take pictures of things. This is a casting of something. And, this guy, he makes these, and I think it's concrete. I don't know how he does it, but, the detail on this is just, like, crazy good. And I happen to see that alongside the road. This was a young guy. He was hauling, I asked, why he's hauling grass, and it's in the city, and he was hauling food for goats. So he went out, away from town, gathered up some grass, put it on his bike, and drove back. This is a dish I had, I forget what it was called, but I think it's like hominy. And I mentioned it when in a post on Facebook, and I have this theory. If I get something if you put enough sugar on it, or you put enough sauce on it, or salt on it, or enough hot sauce, just about anything you can get down. So I tasted it. It was okay, and I put some sugar in it, and it was really good. And of course, I got berated by the purist here in Florida that said, no, you don't do that. But it was pretty good. I enjoyed it, and I would eat it again. So, but it was like a breakfast dish. And you could see on that other bowl was peanuts, and they put peanuts on that to eat with it. First time I ever had it. Used to be years ago when I went to Ghana, I'd see these all the time. This is a termite mound, and first one I've seen this big in a long time. I'm like 5'9", so it's probably a good 10, 11 foot high, and just there. Every once in a while you can see where something's burrowed into it to eat the termites. And they'll live in there and everything's fine except certain times of the years. And you can ask Chad about his experiences with termites. They start swarming. And at night, it's just like the locust plague. And they come out. And if you happen to be public preaching and there's a light there, most likely you're going to swallow a termite. I've swallowed more than one. I have a picture somewhere back in the archives where Chad is preaching, and on his back are it's like that Indiana Jones movie where the girl's reaching her hand in where all the bugs. I think they got those bugs from where Chad was preaching. Just really weird ones. But anyway, that's a termite mound. Things that interest me is seeing ladies. She's carrying, that's probably like a 5-gallon bucket, and she's carrying that water on her head. And I'm thinking like water is 6-7 pounds a gallon, 8 pounds to a gallon. So she's carrying 40 pounds of liquid on her head. And sometimes if they don't fill it all the way to the room, she'll put, she may have a little cloth, like a bun she'll put on it, but they'll put that on their head and they'll just walk and their hands are doing whatever they want to do, And that's just always amazed me that the sisters can do that. And you talk about posture. Every Ghanaian, even the guys carry things on their head when they're young. Their posture, they all look like they were ex-Marines. They just perfect posture. The last day there, Sister Alice made fufu and light soup. Fufu is it's made with cassava and plantain. It's like a stiff mashed potato, and you eat it with your fingers. Some like it, some don't. I don't dislike it. It's not my most favorite, but it's good. This is a lady. You can see she's carrying that stack of fabric on her head, and she's got something else in her other hand. She's just walking around, and she'll sell those, and people will stop her. This is not this year's picture, but I came across it, and I don't know if you can see it very well. This is an idol. I think Chad has probably seen this. This was in Anaya Kope. And over here on the left picture, and I had to take these as we're walking by the place. I'm taking pictures with my phone as I'm walking because obviously they didn't want me to take the pictures. But on the left, those things that look like balls, they're concrete cocoa pods made to represent cocoa pods. And in the center was a bucket down in the cement, and then they had this cloth across there, and I think they had a knife hanging from it. And as the cloth would get moisture from the air, it would drip. And so they would think that was some kind of an act of this idol that they made offerings to. This is our team. This is the basic. On the left, there's Paul Molitor. That's Brother Godson. Christopher Leccia, who now lives in the United States. John Padamia. That's Sister Alice Adala. There's Brother Albert Amonate and Brother Otto Adala. So that's our basic core group. Like when we're planning the trip, Adala and Albert and Paul and John, they're finding the places. They're setting up places where the brethren that come and work with us, where they can stay, line up cooks, line up food, and all those things. So they're doing all the legwork. I just show up and go where they point me to go. Just to give you an idea, what the expenses were. Airfare to Ghana and then to the north for Ottawa and I were about a little over 3,300. In Mepe to transport for the team, for the preachers that came in, for the workers, for food, for places to stay, that was about a little over 3,800. In the north was 1,000. The radio program, we've been sponsoring a radio program. I left $1,200 to pay for that for the next year, and then benevolence came to about $1,500 just between the things that I told you about. So the total expenses were almost $11,000, just about $98 short of $11,000. So that's pretty much the trip. It went good. I mean, everything was fine until the last day for me. I mean, that just happens. If you've ever traveled, you can get that going anywhere. You just get the wrong bug, and all of a sudden you have problems. It's just life. But we made it home safely. My family was safe. Thank you for those, especially my son-in-law, who took good care of my wife while she was gone, and I greatly appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to him. In the passage in Matthew, here's Jesus. He's been crucified, put in a tomb, resurrected. And as he prepares to ascend to his Father in heaven, his thought is like, share the gospel. Share the gospel. There's a lost and dying world out there. I've been blessed for over 30 years to go to Ghana. But there's people here in our country that need the gospel. And they may be your neighbor. They may be your co-worker. And we think that, they're not interested. Well, they may not be. But there are still people that have good and honest hearts and want to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. It still saves. And it still can cause people to be with God throughout eternity. Maybe you haven't obeyed the gospel. We'd like to offer you the opportunity this morning. If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that belief has made you decide to follow him, to lay aside sin and to do what Jesus asks you to do, then and only then can you confess him as Lord. But you still have the problem of your past sins. And God says those past sins are washed away through baptism. And he tells us through the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 6 that when we come up from that watery grave of baptism, we arise to walk in newness of life. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul says we're a new creation in Christ, something new, something that God can use, something that can be with God throughout eternity. We'd like to help you to do that. And if you are a New Testament Christian, and maybe you've not been living as God would have you to live, maybe you've not been thinking what God would have you to think, maybe you've not been saying what God would have you to say, God wants you to acknowledge that to him and to turn from it. And he says if we will do that, he will forgive us of all unrighteousness. If we can help in any way, won't you come as we sing this song of encouragement?